I'd like to give you a little bit of background on this trip and the guys that I went up there with. This trip took place in June of this year. We were up for 2 weeks from the middle of June to the end of June, and I got hooked up with these three guys a year ago. Bob Newmeyer, who's a member of our club here, introduced me to these guys. We went on a trip in 2011 to Alaska to a place called Paradise Valley. We were all up there together for 10 days. And that's something I wanted to do for 5 or 6 years, never got a chance. And then thanks to Bob, I got to do it. And then we went back and did it again this year. And we had a great time the first time I was up there. And this time we had a really great time. These guys are all fairly experienced at looking for gold with metal detectors. I consider myself a rookie when it comes to looking for gold with a metal detector. I've detected for about 9 years now, but if I rolled up all the time I spent looking for gold, it would probably come up to about 2% of the time that I metal detect. So I haven't got to detect for gold a lot, but I get to hang with the big dogs once in a while and learn from them. So we made this second trip to Alaska to a different place. The place that I'm going to be talking about tonight is about 7 miles north of Nome, and it's been privately owned for many years. And the people who own this property worked it themselves commercially for quite a long time. And then it sat for some years, and they decided sometime last year that they wanted to try and open this property up and have people come up, and it's it's the pay to mine kind of thing. And you can high bank, you can run a sluice box, you can pan, or you can use a metal detector. And we were lucky enough that we were the first ones in there this year. The 4 of us actually didn't go as a group this year. The prior year we were all together for the entire trip, but the way things worked out this year, one of the guys that happens to live in Anchorage and I went up the 15th of June, and we were there for about 10 days before Bob and our other friend from Connecticut came up. So we kind of overlapped, but we all got pretty close to 2 weeks. I don't know. I think Bob might have had to leave a day or two early, and we had quite a great time. These folks that own this property are just terrific people. They're very hospitable. Take good care of you, and they're more like friends to us now after just being up there one time. And they're just great folks. The name of this place is called Alaska Gold and Resort, and it's, like I said, it's located about 7 miles out of Nome. It's on the north side of Anvil Mountain. And I don't know how many of you folks, I'm sure a lot of you follow the GPAA Gold Fever Show, Tom Massey. You probably, if you've watched any of those shows, you've heard him talk about Anvil Mountain and some of the things in the area around Nome, because they have their Cripple River Camp is about 12 miles west of that picture right there. And I know there's probably at least one person out there that's more than passively interested in Cripple River right now. And so that's a little bit about that. A lot of you watch Alaska Gold, and you watch Bering Sea Gold. Well, the Bering Sea Gold show is shot here, right off the beach. And there's some things that we'll be looking at that I want to touch on real quick before we get into the gold nugget part of this thing. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the people that are in that show, and you'll see some things that you probably recognize if you watch that show very much. So let's pop the next one up there, Brandon, and give you an idea. I got my handy little pinpointer here. This is where we were this summer. And last year, we were right about there. We were north of the Arctic Circle, just south of the Brooks Range. So this Seward Peninsula area is fairly rich with gold. It was basically discovered back in like 1898 or 1899. You might have heard of the three lucky Swedes. If you've watched Tom Massey's shows, he talks about the three lucky Swedes. One of them was instrumental in finding this, and then he partnered up with two other guys, and they had some pretty spectacular results up by Nome. They put Nome on the map. Okay, Brandon? Quick note here. This club has grown so much in the last 12 months. I thought about talking about this, and then I thought, gee, half the people in here aren't going to know what I'm talking about, but I'll throw it out there anyway. It was kind of a coincident thing. I jumped on the airplane. We were not in the air 15 minutes, and I'm talking to the guy sitting next to me and asked him why he was going to Anchorage. And he said he lives in Denver, but he was working there as an electrician, and he was commuting back and forth. He'd go to Alaska for 3 or 4 weeks, and then he'd come home for a week, and then he'd go back. And he asked me, he said, what are you going to Anchorage for? And I said, well, I'm going there to meet a buddy of mine, and then we're going to fly up to Nome, and we're going to prospect for gold. And he said, oh yeah, he said, I've got a buddy that used to do that a lot. He doesn't do it much anymore, but he was just nuts about it. And I said, well, yeah, what's his name? I said, maybe I've heard about him, or maybe I even know him. He says, Jeff Mosteller. And I thought, wow, what are the chances of this? So, and Jeff was the vice president of this club for several years. So I thought, well, that's a good start to the trip. Okay, Brandon. I flew into Anchorage and met up with my friend Ken Pitcher, who lives in Anchorage. And then we hooked up, and we were going to take off and head for Nome. Okay. That's Ken. He's a retired wildlife biologist for the state of Alaska, and he is an excellent metal detectorist. He's only been at it for about 6 years, but this guy is really good at finding gold with a metal detector, and he is just intense. I watch him a lot, try to learn from him, ask him questions, and he's been very helpful to me. And the time that I spent up there with him, we had just a great time on this trip. Okay? Well, we get to Alaska, get to the airport, and one of the owners of the operation came down. Her name is Betty Crutch. Her and her son run this operation now. Betty picked us up at the airport and took us up to the gold camp. Okay. And while we were up there, I got invited by her son Augie, who is the other half of this operation, to go up to the top of Amble Mountain. And while we were up there, he was pointing out all these different things, this is this and this is that. And to go back to the Bering Sea Gold Show, if you're familiar with Steve Pomrenke, the guy that owns the Christine Rose, the barge with the backhoe on it, this is his place right here. And these folks that own Alaska Golden Resort are good friends with Steve Pomrenke. And let's see here. I think that's all we need on that one, Brandon. The reason I took this picture is that big bucket line dredge right there, sitting right where it stopped many, many years ago. There's several of them up there that you can see from up on the mountain. And another thing I'd like to point out, the picture that we just looked at in this picture, and there's 2 or 3 others in here, this picture was taken at about midnight on the 26th of June. And I'm just with my little everyday digital camera, nothing, no fancy lens or anything, but it was about 11:30, 12 o'clock when that picture was taken. Brandon, that's the famous Anvil Rock on top of Anvil Mountain. You might have seen pictures of that on some of the gold fever shows. Brandon? And then this is looking up the beach to the west. Here again, if you've listened to Tom Massey, that's Sledge Island right there. And up in here is the Cripple River camp that the GPAA runs. That's about 12 miles up the beach from Nome. Brandon? And here's a little history. I don't know if a lot of people are aware of the fact that Wyatt Earp spent some time in Nome when it was first discovered. He came up there and with a partner built the first 2-story building in Nome. And he didn't stay there for very long. And I understand that he had interests other than the business that these guys had. And one of the claims that these folks have on their property is called the Maddie. And Maddie was one of Wyatt Earp's wives. And this place was called the Dexter. And the area where the Maddie is located is called Dexter Divide. And it's right where we were working. But when, like I say, he wasn't there very long, but when he left, they say he had $50,000 in his pocket, which was big money back then. So he was probably pretty successful with the business, but maybe he was also successful in grub staking some miners or something in addition. And this is just some points of interest. You're probably familiar with the Iditarod dog sled race. It starts in Fairbanks and it ends on the main street of Nome. And you can see this thing has got skids on it. And in the wintertime, when the streets are covered with snow, they just drag that thing out in the middle of the main street, and that's where they finish the Iditarod dog race. And then I went and grabbed some gas with Augie one day, and I thought it was kind of interesting, the prices of fuel up there. I noticed he'd put $20 worth of gas in the tank of his truck, and I looked at the gas pump, and it was like 3.3 gallons for $20. So. And here again, this is, if you watch the Bering Sea Gold Show, this is the Breakers Bar where they hang out. And if you saw the first season when Steve Pomeranke's son, Sean, supposedly got stabbed in a fight right here on the sidewalk, I got the inside scoop from some of the people that live up there. He really didn't get stabbed. He did get in a fight with a guy out here, and there was a broken beer bottle on the ground, and they were rolling around, hammering on each other, and Sean rolled onto a piece of broken glass from the bottle, and it stabbed him in the back. But on the show, they have to make everything drama. So, when I saw the show, I thought, gee, some guy whipped out a knife and stabbed this dude in the back, but that's really not what happened. So, Brandon? And this is the oldest saloon in town. This is the Board of Trade. And I took this picture for one of our members, Rick Lacombe, who's not here tonight. He's in Branson, Missouri right now with his wife. But when he found out I was going to Nome, he spent some time here when he was in the Air Force, and they were sought in for 3 or 4 days because of weather. And he said, I tried to stay away for a couple of days, but after that I couldn't take it. We had to go down to the bar. So he said, if you get a chance, take a picture of it for me. So This one was for Rick. And then I also had some time to go down to the beach and look at some of the dredges. You know, when this dredging thing has been going on up there a long time, way before this Bering Sea Gold Show became popular. And I was hoping I might run into some of the people that are actually on the show. But it was a nice day. The ocean was fairly calm, and they were all out dredging by the time I got down here. But I took a few shots of some of the dredges that these people have. And these guys here are actually from one of the film crews up there. They were installing some filming equipment on this particular dredge. But there's just all up and down the beach, these people have got all these crazy setups that they use to go out there and pull gold off the ocean. So I thought, well, that would be interesting to see. So there you have that. And this, I want you to pay attention to this because there's going to be a test. And if you can't answer all these questions, you can't leave tonight. I'll try to give you an idea where we're at and what went on. Here's the airport. This is Nome. It's kind of cut off here. The ocean is down below the screen. Follow this road out. Let's see if I can find my way here. Right out here. This is the famous Anvil Creek that the three lucky Swedes hit their big finds on. Well, right around up Anvil Creek, and right here is Specimen Gulch. And Alaska Golden Resort is right about there, right on the side of this mountain. Looks right down on Anvil Creek. This is Anvil Mountain. This is Dexter Peak. There's the Dexter name. This is Dexter Divide, right through here. This is King Mountain. This right here, this area right here, they have three claims that lay end to end that stretch from right about here up by close to where Anvil Creek heads in the mountains, and it goes right across Dexter Divide over to here. The first one is called the come on, Joe, I can't think of it now. Caribou Bill. This is the Caribou Bill. The Maddie is in the middle, and the one over here is called Snowflake. And right in here, where the Snowflake is where we did most of our work. There was an area there where they had stockpiled material during the winter time. In the winter, they would dig down through the permafrost and then drift parallel with the ground along the pay layer, and they'd bring the material up, stockpile it, and then in the spring, when the snow started to melt, they would work the material in their long toms or whatever else they had to run the material. And there was an area there that, it's probably 3 times the size of the room we're in, where all this material has been sitting for who knows how long. And this is where Augie took us to start out. And the plan was that he would come over every 2 or 3 days with the front loader, and he'd just peel about a foot of material off all this material that's been laying there and spread it around, and then we would detect looking for gold nuggets that the old timers left behind. So this is pretty much the lay of the land. There was let's see where we are here. We went a little further. The area that I just told you about, I refer to as the large area. And after we were there a couple of days, I wandered around, just around the mountain, just a little bit, just maybe a couple hundred yards, and came across one of these pits that they had dug when they would dig down and then they would tunnel. And there was some pretty good looking material sitting there in a pile. And I walked up onto the pile and looked down, and there's 2 holes there that you just know after you've been detected. Somebody had already been up there with a metal detector. They'd snuck onto this property and high-graded gold off the property. And I was really excited when I walked up there, and when I saw those 2 holes, I thought, oh man. But I thought, well, you might as well take a try. You're here. And 6 inches from one of those holes, I found a gold nugget. So we had that small area and then the larger area that we worked basically most of the time we were there. We walked around the property quite a bit and detected here and detected there, but we really had good luck in these 2 areas that I've just told you about. Okay, Brandon, thank you. And this is the operation. I finally found someone that's got a last name that's harder to pronounce than mine, and they call it Crutch Mining. That's how they pronounce their last name. Brandon? This is the picture I took of it. This is the camp, and this is taken from the north side, the north slope of Anvil Mountain, looking down on their camp. And this right here is the famous Anvil Creek, right here. Some massive pieces of gold that have come out of there. Augie told us that there was a couple of pieces. One of them was 163 ounces, and the other one was 183 ounces that came out of this right here. And they told us just a couple of weeks ago via email that they've got an agreement with the people that have this right here. When we go up next year, we're going to be able to detect this. There's some massive piles, dredge piles up here, and they told us they've already been up there with the dozer or the front loader and knocked some of it down and found several nuggets. So we're pretty excited about our return trip. Brandon? This is the main house. This is the camp. This is the dining area. This is the main part. This is our other host, Augie's mom, Betty. Great gal, great cook, good gold panner. She's she's a product of Alaska. I mean, she can do electrical wiring. She operates the equipment. She can do it all. And just a wonderful gal. Really had a good time up there. She just treated us just like family. All the meals are just like sitting down at home and eating. They're all home cooked. Really good food. We had all kinds of great food while we were there. They cooked us breakfast, and then we would pack a lunch and go out all day, and then we'd come back in the evening and she'd cook dinner for us. It was quite a deal. She grows some of her own food up there. She's got a couple of little old hot houses she's had up there for a long time, and they just built this one this year while we were up there. So she grows lettuce and tomatoes and just all kinds of stuff up there. So it's quite a deal. This is Augie. This is Betty's son, Augie. He's quite a guy. He's kind of a MacGyver kind of guy. He's a good miner. He's mined that land. He's just a great guy. He treated us really well. I had a great time with him when we went up on Anvil Peak. He was showing me around, telling me stories, and showing me Pomeranke's place and telling me some of the stuff that he used to do with that guy. We just had a great time up there. Him and his 11-year-old son and I rode the ATVs up there one night. Like I say, I think when we left the camp, it was 11 o'clock at night. We didn't get back till 1 in the morning, and it was still light. This is the crew trailer where we stayed. I stayed here. Ken stayed here. When Bob got there, I think he stayed right here. And then they also have a little tow-around trailer where Tom stayed. But while we were there and right after we left, they were in the process of building 2 cabins to accommodate people for this year. And these cabins are complete now. This is the room I stayed in, right here. Brandon? Like I said, the meals were great. Betty's a great cook. Seared tuna, fresh caught salmon. She makes blueberry preserves. just great, just great. Brendan? Some of the equipment they've got up there, you know, they, like I say, they mined it themselves before. Here's the Augie pushing for us where we were detecting. Okay, Brandon? We did take a high banker up there. Ken shipped a high banker up there because we didn't know if we'd be able to detect day after day after day. So we thought we'd give ourselves a break and go run the high banker once in a while. But we had such good luck detecting for gold that we set the thing up the day that Augie took this picture of us. We ran it for about an hour, and we never ran it again all the time we were up there. But in an hour's time, we found 0.7 of a gram of gold just getting set up. Brandon? That's the gold that came out of the high banker. This is King Mountain, and right in here is the main area where we were working. And then right over in here was that other small area I told you about earlier where we found some gold. This picture was taken at about midnight. Okay, here we are. That's Ken right there detecting. There's Augie pushing. This area produced a lot of gold. This is the small area that I was telling you. This is right up here on the top of this mound is where I found those 2 holes that I told you about. And then right next to them on the right is where I found that nugget. And we went back there and probably worked this place 4 or 5 different times. And Ken and I took about 4.5 ounces of gold out of here. Here's a picture I took in another spot. You hear about the permafrost up there and how tough it is to work with. These are what they call steam points that they used to push into the ground, and they actually would put steam or hot water, and then later on I guess they discovered that just plain water would work to help thaw the ground so they could dig. Here's a close-up of the end. You can see there's a hole there, and then all the way up the length there's holes where the steam or the hot water could come out and they can thaw the permafrost to dig through it. And now we're getting to the fun part. The first couple of days we were there, the first 2 full days, I had a great time. I found 4 nuggets the first day. The second day, the Sunday, which was Father's Day, I found 8. And I was just in heaven. This particular piece here, at the far end of this large area, there was a lot of trash from 80 or 100 years ago. There were cans that had disintegrated into tiny little pieces, and I thought, you know what? I was feeling pretty good, feeling pretty confident after finding what I found. So I said, I'm going to go over there and I'm going to try to cherry pick a piece of gold out of all that trash. And I ended up finding the biggest piece that I found in those 2 days. This piece here and this piece are the same one. And boy, I was feeling pretty good about myself after I did that. That was really fun. Brandon? Here's another shot of that pile. And this thing was a nice even mound, and you can see where I've been pulling it down in layers and detecting it. And this is some of the gold that I found. A total of 8 pieces right in here. Here's 3 of them. Here's the other one. This one's a pretty nice one. I got pretty happy when I found that one. And in this picture here, I don't know if you can see it, but laying there somewhere by that coil is a piece of gold. Right there. That's this one right here. Brandon? And then this is the picture. This was taken in this same area, but this was pretty amazing to me. There's probably 10 inches of vegetation between the surface of the ground and where you can swing the coil on your detector. And then it's, this hole went down another foot or so. But this particular machine is a MineLab 5000, which is an expensive, powerful machine. And that thing went all the way through here and reached into the ground and found a really nice piece of gold for Ken. Brandon? There it is right there. Okay? And he went over there a second time one day while I was over still working the big area and found 3 really nice nuggets. This is one of them. Brandon? Here's another one. And there's this one here. And you can see how deep these holes are that, you know, there's different detectors do different things. And when you pay the kind of money that you have to pay for one of these mine labs, you hope you're going to get something that you don't get from every other detector. And this is the difference here. I did what I considered extremely well with my MXT, and he was totally impressed with it. But there's no way that I could have found some of these nuggets that he found. They were just out of reach of my machine. But he was just totally impressed with what I could do with that MXT, and told me later on in the trip, he says, you probably might not know this, but there's probably been more gold found in Alaska with MXTs than any other metal detector, because he knows a lot of folks up there. So I took him at his word. There's a little close-up there. Bren, there's the 3 nice ones he got out of that one area. And these are not all solid gold nuggets. Some of them are specimen pieces. They have quartz and gold together. And when they're cleaned up, they really look special. And they're probably worth more in some cases than solid gold nuggets because they're rare and they're in big demand by people that collect them. That's the big one that I found on the small area. That was a pretty nice piece there. And then Ken and I were there 10 days when Bob and Tom showed up. And that's them. There's one of them. There's Bob getting ready to head out. And there's Tom. He's from Connecticut. And then I got a quick story. This gets into the meat of this thing. This is a story about trash and treasure, and about being experienced and being patient with a metal detector. The second Sunday we were there, it was in the afternoon. I was getting a little tired. I came across a spot. I'd swing the detector one way, I'd get a good reading for gold. I'd swing it back the other way, it was trash. And I actually remember me standing there and out loud, I was swinging the thing back and forth, you know, good, bad, good, bad. And I looked down at the detector and said, make up your mind. And I learned a real valuable lesson here. I walked away, and Ken followed on. I don't know if it was later that day. I think it was, probably 40 minutes later. Because of his experience, was able to discern that there was gold and trash laying close together, and dug those 2 nuggets up that I walked away from. I learned a valuable lesson that paid off 2 days later. Brandon, there's the payoff. That's a 1-ouncer that I dug 2 days after I walked away from those 2 nuggets we just looked at. I had the same thing happen. And I told myself, remember what you did Sunday. This was on Tuesday. I dug down about 6-7 inches, and this thing comes out. And I almost fell face first into the hole. I could not believe it. But it gets better. Brandon, I get over the first one, swing the detector over the hole, get another reading, dig down a few more inches, out comes this thing, another 1-ouncer. And by then I was just, I couldn't function. I was just out of it. And Ken had been away from the area, and he came back about that time, and he walked up to me and he said, did you find anything? And I shook my head like, yeah, I did. He says, let's see what you found. I reached in my pocket, I pulled out that first one, and I dropped it in his hand, and he was patting me on the shoulder, telling me great job and all this stuff. He goes, you find anything else? I looked at him, I go, yeah, I did. I reach in my pocket, pull this one out, and drop it in his hand, and he about fell down. It was a great, great experience. And then it got even better. I go back to the hole, and it's getting pretty deep now. And there's trash and stuff. You know, I'm not just digging up gold nugget after gold nugget. But after I found the first one, I said to myself, anything in this hole that makes a sound is getting dug up. So I dig and I dig, you know, and a little piece of trash here, a little piece of trash there. Pretty soon, you know, I'm down about 18, 20 inches now, and I get this pretty good hit, and I stick my pick down there, and I'm pulling material up out of the hole, and I'm down on my knees, and I look down in the dirt that I pulled out, and this thing is laying there. And I recognized what it was. The other ones, the first one had dirt on it. I wasn't sure until I picked it up what it was. But when I looked down and saw this thing, you could see gold. It had dirt on it, but you could see gold sticking out in places. You know, you could see a little here, a little there. And I was just, you know, I didn't know what to do. I picked it up, took it over, showed it to Ken, and then he just shook his head like, you know, when's it going to stop? But it continued on. Brandon? That's another look at the same piece. That's just the flip side of it. Okay, Brandon. This is what happened. I found these 3, and then just continued to dig. I found 9 more in the same hole. And by this time, Bob and Tom and Kent, everybody's looking over their shoulder, wondering, you know, like, when's he going to dig up the next piece? And when you start doing this, in the beginning, everybody's pretty happy for you. But when you start doing this, it's like having the score run up on you in a ball game. It ain't so fun for everybody else anymore. And I got a little concerned, and I walked over to Ken, and I said, look, you know, I said, is there some kind of unwritten rule when you're metal detecting and you're having fun like this and finding all this stuff? You know, should I be offering to, you know, share with you guys? And he said, well, some of the guys I hunt with in California do that. I've done it, you know. He said, if you want to do it, you can do it. If you don't, there's no hard feelings. You found it. You can work it as long as you want. But I made up my mind. I said, you know what? I've already had more fun than I thought I was ever going to have on this trip. So I told those guys, we're all going to work this together. Brent? So I said, let's just take turns. I got the first draw, Ken, Bob, and Tom. So we started working this thing together. The first nugget that came out I got, next nugget, Tom or Bob, Ken, then Bob, then Tom. Brandon? This is what this hole that was probably a little smaller than a standard gold pan morphed into in less than a day. Okay? Everybody took turns digging, and we'd throw the material up around the hole and then detect the material that we threw up out of the hole. Finally, it got so deep that it was hard to throw it out of the hole with the shovel, so we put buckets in the hole, and we'd lift the buckets out, dump the material on the ground, and detect the material that came out of the buckets, and then detect the floor and the walls of the hole for nuggets. Bob, or Brandon, there's Tom dumping some material. That's right there's material that just came out of the hole. Okay? And then, when it was all said and done, this is what we ended up with. This is the gold that I got. This is the gold that Ken got. This is the gold that Tom got. This is the gold that Bob got. All out of that hole right there. There's 36 pieces there. We went through that rotation 6 times before we ran this thing out. So each one of these, I got 6 more nuggets. Ken got 6. Tom got 6, and Bob got 6. So it was, and before the whole thing was over, something like 41 nuggets came out of this hole because they worked it after we left. Okay? And then just a picture of everybody beside the hole with the gold that we got out of that hole. There's Bob. There's Tom. And there's me. It was a lot of fun. And there's a little better look at all of it. Bob, when this one came out, when Bob got that one, I started having second thoughts. I thought, boy, if one of these guys pulls an 8-ouncer out of here, I'm going to wish I never let him come in this hole. But it was a lot of fun watching these guys. Yeah, I kind of just stood back and took some pictures, and I enjoyed watching these guys work that hole as much as I had finding this right here. It was a lot of fun. So that's the story of that spot and how it was found. And then Augie took me into Nome, and we had to do a little clowning around by the big gold pan where they have the statues of the three lucky Swedes. So that's the 4.5-ouncer there, Brandon. And then he came off with this. He says, "Come over here and let me get a picture of the three lucky Swedes and the lucky Italian." So there's the picture of the three lucky Swedes, and then this dude here. There's the nugget in the gold pan with him looking down at it. I thought that was pretty cool. But we went into town, and he wanted me to go to the newspaper office with him, and he wanted to tell the story to the gal that runs the newspaper. So we did that while we were in town. Brandon? Okay, enough of that guy. Well, I told her the story, and Augie, explained what went on up there. And in the beginning, she didn't seem too interested. And I'd taken the big one and the 2 1-ouncers with me. And Augie said, "Well, show her a piece of the gold." So I took one of those 1-ouncers out of my pocket and I put it in her hand. And she was like, "Wow, that's pretty nice." And she didn't seem overly impressed, but I thought, this is Nome, Alaska. These people see gold all the time. Maybe this is just not that big a deal. But then he says, "Well, show her one of the other ones." So I put the other 1-ouncer in her hand, and her eyes got a little bigger. And then he goes, "Show her that other one." I reached in my other pocket and hauled this thing out, put it in her hand. She was just like, "Holy cow." She said, "Let me go inside and get my camera." And so she came out and took a couple pictures of us. And then she, "Come in the office, I want to hear the story." So we told her the story, and, that was the end of it. I thought, good, these guys, hopefully it makes the paper and they get a little free press for their business, and everybody was happy. Brandon? That's the second page there that tells the story. Okay? Well, and before I talk about this, the thing that was cool about this paper thing, this is a small town, and it's a weekly newspaper. And it comes out on Thursday. So the day that we were there was a Thursday. So I was leaving. Ken and I both left that evening. We were done with our 2 weeks. Well, I've been back about a week when Bob comes back and calls me up. "Oh, I'm back in town, had a good time, found some more gold. Oh, by the way, your picture's all over the front page of the Nome newspaper." I said, "Yeah, right." He said, "No, I'm serious." He said, "I brought 3 copies back for you." So that's how that happened. I was totally unaware of it until he came back. But this is the gold. This is the gold that Ken got. This is that picture that was actually taken after he got back to Anchorage and cleaned it up, because he sells all his gold. He doesn't keep it. I think if he gets attached to a piece here or there, he does. But other than that, he sells it. So this is Ken's. That's 2 weeks worth there. Okay, Brandon? This is my 2 weeks. Right there. There's 49 pieces there. Brandon? There's Bob's. He had a good time. And there's Tom's. Brandon? And when it was all said and done, this is how we ended up. Ken's take for 2 weeks. Mine, Bob's, and Tom's 30 ounces. We had a heck of a good time. And I don't know what the price of gold was. I didn't hear JJ when he said it. What was the price of gold tonight?
$17.39.
Yeah. Well, at 15.40 an ounce, that's $43,000. So it's probably 45 or 46 today's price. So we had us a pretty good time. Brandon? So, and that's the end of that story, and I'm sticking to it. like to take a minute here to thank my wife Mary for helping me with this presentation, because without her help, it would not have happened. Thanks, sweetie.
Thanks, Bill. Well, we ran over quite a bit, but was it worth it? Good.